The following is a special WURD presentation of Behind the Mic, Personal Journeys in Audio. This program was recorded in front of a live studio audience on February 26th, 2025. And now, our program director and general manager, Ashanti Martin.
I want to thank our venue, Canvas, and Michelle Vaughn, who's the owner of Canvas. This is a great space. I'm very honored to be here in this Black-owned space on a day when we are spending Black intentionally. I also want to thank our sponsors, which are Comcast and the Pennsylvania Lottery, and our partner, Scribe Video Center, which is just down the street and is a partner with us in this event. And I also wanted to acknowledge Brightness in Black, which is a project of StoryCorps and Andrea Walls over there. They're doing a lot of great work here in Philadelphia as far as collecting stories and archiving Black stories. So if you have not encountered them at an event, please look out for them. They're all over Philadelphia this year. I want to bring our first moderator, who is host of Reality Check on WURD Radio, Tonya Pendleton.
Good evening, everyone. I said good evening, everyone. All right. I'm Tonya Pendleton. I am the host of Reality Check on WURD Radio. That is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Thursday, except when my esteemed colleague, Ernest Owens, is hosting City Council Live on Thursdays. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and being with us as we embrace and explore the world of audio content. And this particular panel is Behind the Mic. And we're going to find out what the folks here have done to push the audio content world forward. There are a lot of voices out here, as you know, and these are some of the strongest. And so I want to start because we don't have a whole lot of time. So I might as well just get started by introducing everyone. I'm going to start from my left. Eric Cole is the host of UnPacking on WURD Radio and also of the podcast Hung Up. Eric, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. And next to Eric is the lovely, and my first time actually meeting her in person today. She comes on Reality Check. Her name is Natasha Terrell, and she is the host of Travel Flies Sexy, which is a podcast and also a segment on Good Day Philadelphia on Fox 29.
Yes, ma'am.
And to my right, yes, this is Vincent Webb. He is the co-host of Micho Mission, and he is on a mission with his partner, Lynn Webb, to see all of the Black movies ever made. I don't know how they are doing that, but they are making it happen. I think we're well into thousands now.
Well, we're at 500.
Well, okay. I'm getting ahead. And then, of course, there is Mr. Ernest Owens, the host of the podcast Ernestly Speaking, and also of City Council Live Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Speaking that truth to power. So let me start with you, Eric. Why audio, and how did you get started? What inspired you to get started?
For me, back in 2017 is when I started my audio journey. SoundCloud, I had a little, MacBook Air and a cheap microphone. And for me, it was just like creating a space that I felt like I didn't see. Queer identifying. I saw a lot is emphasized on our bodies and how we look. And I knew that there was so much more, with our journeys, our professions, and traveling the world, and, education and music. And I just wanted to create that space. I didn't want to be one of the people that you see online that complain about what we don't see when I felt like I can just, create that space myself. And I knew that there were other people who needed that space too. So.
Sure. Natasha, travel, something that was not always seen as the province of Black people, African Americans, yes, even though we've obviously been traveling since day one. Yes. But why travel, and what got you into audio?
It's so interesting that you make the point of finding a space, finding a lane, and then creating it. Because I do think that that is a catalyst in a lot of spaces of, all right, I want to be the change I want to see. So I'm going to create a space that is inviting for me, somewhere I feel comfortable, and then something that can grow and be of affection to others. And so that's really where the concept of Travel Flies actually came about. I am a travel agency owner. I have been for the last 10 years. And my journey in that space has opened multiple doors. And I was like, but our Black and brown people are traveling quite a bit, which is amazing. However, we're not like talking about it in a way that's educational and that's informative and that is speaking to us the way we speak to each other. And so that was really how the concept came about, is I wanted to be the change I wanted to see.
Got it.
Yeah.
Vince, movies, Black movies. Thank you, Ernest. Why movies and why audio?
Well, I'll just continue the theme that it was a space that our voices weren't being heard. And, you know, so many aspects of our culture, whether we're talking about music or film, television, etc., there are people that don't look like us that critique it. And obviously they don't have the depth and frankly, the range most of the time. And rather than complain, right, my partner Lynn and I, back in 2017, we had met through various channels here in Philadelphia, just with community radio. We said we should do it. And, you know, as we said, the goal is to just critique every Black film and give it the attention and just the you know, this disciplined look at it that it deserves. So.
Ernest, what inspired you and why audio?
Well, I was forced in many ways to do it. A lot of my readers, followers, listeners will always say, you should do a podcast. And I think for me, it was like, people always tell me to do something. And I'm like, I got a lot of stuff on my plate. And so I'm always like, I don't want to do it. But during the pandemic, what I noticed was that, you know, a lot of articles I was writing, you can only get a certain number of words, you know, with 500 words, whatever you got to do. And a lot of times I felt like what did not get left out, what got left out the story, I think that context was important. And so what kind of inspired me was, one, it was the pandemic, I was bored. Two, I just didn't like the podcasts that were out. A lot of them, I just found them to be just kind of just dumb. Like, okay, you want to have gender battles and debates about who should pay for this and, you know, all these very like pop culture cheesy stuff. But there was nothing that looked like me. There was nothing that was millennial. There was nothing that was smart. There was nothing that was Black. There was nothing that was hyper local. There was nothing that was talking about issues that I think people would care about if they knew the whole story. Yeah. And so what inspired me was just the idea that I already knew the news. I was already writing stories covering it, but what would it look like if I could give people 2.5, sometimes 3.5 hours? And people say, oh, that's a long podcast. I've done over 200 episodes and we just cracked into the top 200 of Apple Podcasts for news.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So, you know, 4 years later, 200 episodes later, we're still doing this and we're still breaking the news, and I'm able to do it without having to ask permission of an editor or a news manager or anybody else. I'm able to curate the news through my lens, and people have been going every Monday at midnight. If you're extra early, or Monday morning we're going to work, you can listen to my podcast. And that was what inspired me, was to provide that context that I felt like was missing in the daily news.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, let me ask you, when it comes to audio, there are a lot of voices out there, but how do you keep your voice fresh and unique?
Well, I'm always, tapping into what my passion is and my purpose. I feel like you always have to go back to that. And, you know, when you've been doing something for 5, 10 plus years, you really have to give yourself the space and the agency to grow, to be okay with change and evolution. So you said the question was, how do I keep my voice relevant?
How do you keep your voice fresh in a sea of voices? There are a lot of people that have a mic.
There are. And, you know, one thing I've always done with my podcast is bring the experts on. I've never claimed to be an expert in any one area ever since I started my podcast. My goal was to bring the voices, the stories, the experts on so that way we can unpack and that folks can take that information and kind of share. And just staying in with what's going on and bringing those relevant voices into the spaces to have relevant conversations, because my podcast is just not about entertainment, but it's about, really creating a space for advocacy and to give voice and light to those things that are often, shadow banned on social media. And, and it's really been a blessing to be in this space in WURD, to be in, giving light to something that hasn't been really talked about and where there's, often fear and misinformation. So I think all of those things keep you relevant, keep people asking you questions, and keep people challenging you. Challenge me, because this is a journey of growth and learning and exchanging stories. So, I'm always open to that.
Natasha, you are actually helping people plan trips and travel and researching destinations and traveling yourself. Does that give you the credibility that you believe is needed in the space? Because travel has now gotten also crowded with a lot of different content creators in that space.
Yes. So funny enough, I did not start out with the intent to be a content creator or even an audio creator. I set out with the intent to help Black and brown people travel and travel affordably. And so, after 10 years, I've definitely successfully done that, but it's also then allowed me to get the credibility, get the experiences, go out actually outside, be a travel agent, and really speak to what I'm selling. And so then it kind of naturally gravitated into the audio space, because now I have a platform where people can go back and listen if they're planning their trip to Tulum. And I've done a deep dive on that, or they can go back and listen to the top 5 packing tips, because it's more of a fluid environment than it is I'm sending you an email with stuff, or I'm creating a piece of content online that can get lost in the mass of stuff that I have on my page. So that is really where the inspiration of the podcast is like, how can I make this simple for clients, simple for new and experienced travelers, and simple for myself? I'll just send you a link.
And thank you for that, Natasha. Now, got to ask you, you're translating movies to people who are listening, so you don't always have the benefit of visuals when you are on the audio side. So what is it about you doing this podcast that helps you to translate it to the audience?
Well, I think the greatest thing has been, it's a conversation. I think we've done a really good job building this community. And after all these years, we go back and forth. We all have a reference that we share. We announce a week in advance. We say, we're going to watch this film. Oftentimes people will watch it before. And it really is less about the visual and more about just the conversation. And, quite frankly, I think the most radical thing is we get to center Blackness with ourselves. So it helps, but that's, a lot of times that's not really the biggest point of the conversation.
Right. It's really about the community that you're creating as well. It's really about the community,
exactly.
Yeah. Ernest, I've got to ask you, when it comes to news and politics and the things that you have focused on in your work, that those are things that have long been seen as through the white lens and the white gaze. Everything comes from sort of whiteness as this default. So when you are bringing your perspective to it, how do you make that work for people who are used to hearing it maybe from some white person?
Well, it's not that hard for me because this city is Black. Right. And that does persist. So it's weird for them to cover us versus the other way around. I just want other people in our community to colonize their mind on what they want, right? Because I think the issue isn't so much for me. I'm doing my thing. I'm very confident in my work. I think it's about the community and what they expect, right? Right. I asked myself this question the other day about just Joy Reid, right? What happened to Joy Reid? What happened to Melissa Harris Perry? Because it's been going on for a long time. Okay? This didn't just start with Joy Reid. Yep. Tiffany Cross, not too long ago either. But I think what's interesting is that if you look at those people love national journalists, Black journalists nationally. They say, go after the White House, go after Trump, go after these big figures. But there are Black journalists here in Philly that's going after establishments, offices, city council? And do we get the same love and reverence that the Joy Reids and national people get?
Right.
Because what's funny is that we're in a state that's predominantly Black with a political power structure that's predominantly Black, and we don't get the keep Joy Reids in. We don't call for boycotts and protests and let us support to keep Black journalists in Philadelphia. So I'm the president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists, and I've noticed that even in our own community, there is this anti-Blackness. Where do we want Black truth tellers and journalists to speak truth to power? You know, when I've been out here doing this work and speaking truth to power and calling out politicians, the biggest audience that I find that's critical to that, because we're in a predominantly Black city, right, is people in our own community that oftentimes are the most hard on Black journalists when we do it. But when white journalists at the Philadelphia Inquirer and other major white publications do it, they just say they're doing their job. Why can't I do my job?
Let me piggyback off of that a
Let's
little
do
bit,
it.
because I think that there's a point that when you are someone who is Black and you are talking about Black people and Black issues, that sometimes you do get that pushback. So how are you able to navigate that? Because as you said, you're doing journalism, you're a truth teller.
Well, I tell them, if we don't do it, who do you want to do it? Because the irony is, right, is that when it's our celebrities, it's these people that are getting blasted in the press, they say, oh, you see them white reporters, that narrative. And when the Black people do it and the journalists do it, it's the same energy. So what do you want is the question I ask community. What do you want? I know what I want. I want the truth.
Right.
It's nothing that stops what I have to do. They say, well, what side are you on? I'm on the side of the truth.
Right.
And the truth is going to be wherever it's going to be. So I'm never confused about my North Star. But my question to the community is, what is your North Star? Is it the truth? Is it making money? Is it making profit? Sometimes these things don't align with the truth. In my career, I'm grateful that I work and I make money for a living to tell the truth.
Right.
A lot of people don't make money to tell the truth. And so for me, I never am confused on what my purpose is and what it is. When stories come out that people may or may not like about certain people they like, you know, they'll go, well, how do you feel about this? I'm like, well, I told the truth. I feel good. I go to bed good at night. Some people, right, they're sweating, they're nervous, they're whatever. But that question becomes, what do you want? Because I know what I want, but I need the community to figure out, when we say we want the truth, can we handle the truth? If we say we want Black people to speak truth to power, are we supporting and amplifying those people that speak truth to power? Are we complacent and complicit? Because the reality is, we say protect Joy Reid, but I'm also saying protect WRD.
Right.
I'm just saying we need to protect our own Black media institutions in our own backyard. We talking about these national conglomerates begging them to stay. You're begging them to give, 1 to 2, 3 anchors when you got WRD that has me, her, and a couple of people in this room. Where is that support?
Right.
Where is that investment? Where is that organizing, mobilizing to support what's in our own backyard? If you're not protecting what's here, you can't be surprised what's happening up top.
That's
just
for
saying.
Sure. Let me ask too, whether you consider yourself a journalist, and I'll start with you, Eric, or a content creator. When you have to be critical about someone in your own community, how do you handle that? Because we're talking about audio content, so we're literally talking about, we have a voice. And we are considered, everyone here, a credible messenger in doing what we do. So if there's something that goes on, if there's someone in your community, LGBT community, that you have to criticize because of something that has happened or that you're discussing or that you need to take to task, how do you handle that? Because people do look at it when it's someone Black that you're supposed to co-sign everything that they do.
Yeah, I think people expect you to be authentic, and that's what helps, curate your following. It keeps people in tune with what you're saying, keeps people subscribed and listening, is that you're showing up authentic and you're not showing favorites or being biased about certain people or certain topics. People can see right through that. And now in the age of internet, they'll screenshot it and now they dragging you online and they got everybody commenting under it. So, and then now you're having to respond to that. So I think, if you stand on speaking truth to power, using your platform as an unapologetic way to keep the community informed, keep them on the up and up about what's going on, and being just like, hey, these are the facts. putting everything out there and really just like giving people that informed information so they can really make their own choices. You know what's best for your family. You know what's best for your community on your block. You know what I mean? I can't speak to what California LGBTQ community is doing, like specifically in their area. Right. Yeah, I can give you some general, yeah, exactly. But it's really just empowering people to be informed and pick and choose how they, choose to move.
Natasha, your endorsement or lack thereof could help or hurt a Black-owned business. But if you have an experience when you are going to a Black-owned bed and breakfast or restaurant or destination, and you have to say, I don't know if I think this was that great, and potentially get some pushback, how do you handle that?
It's interesting that you bring this up, because my co-host and I have been in a space of how do we navigate still being excited about our podcast topics in the space right now where everyone's a little apprehensive as it pertains to travel. Yeah. So I kind of look at it in the same scope where, to Eric's point, address it head on and allow your audience, your viewers, to make their own decisions. So in the example of, let's say I don't have the most pleasant travel experience, the podcast is there to give you insight. You are then allowed to take the insight and make your informed and next steps decision accordingly. I always say I am in the business of travel. I am not in the business of selling, meaning I'm not going to convince you ever to take a trip. I'm never going to tell you that you need to get on the plane if right now it's not comfortable for you. That's not my job. My job is to give you the information, to inspire you to want to see yourself in the destination, and to let you know the experience that I had, and so that you can go out and be great on your own or opt to not, but at least you got the tape. That's my job.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Natasha. Yeah. Now I'm going to make it easy for you, and I'm just going to give you one name.
Okay.
Tyler Perry.
No. I think that's the perfect person, because I was going to discuss that. Just to add to everything that you all said about authenticity,
right,
and just your own integrity. I think you also, frankly, when you're talking about art and culture, have to come from a place of love. Like, as you sort of joke about, right, you're not going to like everything. Like, we're not in the business of reading press releases. Like, we've done 500 plus movies. You like them different ways. They're different movies. I think Tyler Perry is a perfect example where we criticize, we engage, we grapple, but you never belittle. Mm-hmm. You are never insulting, because I do think there is a type of criticism of Tyler Perry in particular, frankly, that is both racist and classist. Because it's like, how dumb are you to like this?
Right.
But at the same time, you can engage this critically, honestly, and know that it comes from a place of love, first of all.
Right.
Second of all, speaking of community, one of the favorite things that happens sometimes is we'll get letters, we'll get feedback. Like, we have a portion at the beginning of the podcast where we read letters and emails, and someone disagrees with us.
Sure.
I disagree with that, and we, are blessed to have this space to give them space. So I think it's got to come from love. And I think people understand that, you kind of build up your own integrity and your own credibility, that, you're not taking cheap shots. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you something is good if I don't think it's good.
Right. Right. And I think that's the critical thing. It's the same with you, Ernest. When you are reporting or talking about some shenanigans that might be happening in City Hall or among our elected leadership, you want to be truthful, but do you feel that you also have to be mindful of the personalities involved, or the fact that you may get pushback sometimes from people who are defending them?
No.
It's plain and simple.
No. For starters, I'm a taxpayer.
Well,
my money pays for their jobs.
Right.
And all of your money as voters, as taxpayers, and people that's engaged in this, they don't get this power without us. So if I'm going to kowtow to somebody that I'm paying to do a job that I might find to be subpar or mediocre, then I'm accepting it. My grandmother used to always say, accept what you expect. And so if you accept nonsense, you can expect it. You see what I'm saying? If you accept disrespect, you can expect disrespect. So if I don't accept the nonsense, I'm hopefully not going to expect it. And so I think there's a moment in time where we gotta reset the room. We done forgotten as a people how this is supposed to work. I'm here in newsrooms, and I'm talking as someone who's been in the position to talk to different newsrooms, that people are afraid to cover certain politicians because they're scared about what people are going to say on Twitter. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You have a job to tell the truth as a journalist. Those elected officials have a job to represent the people. And if everybody's afraid to do their jobs, then who is failing? The community is failing. The people who actually don't have the ability to fend for themselves are failing. And so I have an obligation, a moral obligation to myself, to the community that I live in, to the people that read my work, to know that I am doing the best that I can with what I have to provide them the information to make critical decisions. My work is not to make people decide, it's to give people agency. There's a difference, right? It's a difference. My frat brother over here, Eric, we talk about a lot of times about giving people the decision to choose. I don't choose for people. People get that twisted. Politicians will call me and say, why are you coming at my man's like that? I'm sorry, but I'm not a politician. I'm not a campaign. I'm in the political world as a journalist, but I'm not in a political world as looking out for you. That's what you and your lawyer, your PR person, your staff got to do, because they all getting paid. I'm not getting that payroll. Right. At one point in time, they wanted me to be a comms director somewhere. I said no. But I say this to say that people got to remember what their role is and do their job. Right. Somebody says, well, how do I do this? Do your job. Like if you actually do your job and you actually focus on what your job is, you'll find yourself not being in trouble all the time. I think it's when you're trying to think about everybody else and think for somebody else and think about them and what they got to do and when you do all of that, then you get distracted from what you're supposed to do. So all that you said, respectfully, I'm not thinking about all that. Right. Because that's not my job. Right. That's their job. And I think news leaders, general managers, editors-in-chief, all these people, with the stuff that we're dealing with right now and nationally and locally, if people just stuck to what their job is and stopped playing politics, they wouldn't have to fall for the politricks. Right. Because when you play the game plays you. Okay. And I'm too grown to play games. Hear that?
If I can tie that back, though, into just the podcasting space, because there's a few different niches that sit up here. And whether you have a podcast that is an open forum or you have one that is, niche-based, niche-based like myself, you do have to kind of consider how you're navigating. So back to the Discord here, it's a matter of choosing what type of conversation you want to have on your platform. Delivering the news or delivering the information that is applicable to your subject matter. So while I may not touch on politics in the extent that Ernest might, I will certainly still address how it could impact travel of today. So, if you're out there and you're thinking about a specific niche for your podcast, there's always current events. There's always topics to tie in that, like the earlier point, still keeps you relevant, but it also allows you to decide what the line is that you want to teeter-totter or cross if you'd like to. But it doesn't alienate your audience from you just going off into a different space that they might not be used to. Because we all have passions. We all have things that really grind our gears, especially today. But we also have an audience and we also have a space that people look to probably for a sense of light each day or each week, when your episodes drop. So keep that in mind as well, because, these are great topics too. But I wouldn't see myself going that deep. And I'm like, dang, maybe, but no, I'm staying travel lane. I'm gonna stay right there.
We are getting down in time, but I do want to ask one more question before we go. These are times right now in our political climate that some of the things that we are talking about could be viewed as dangerous, that some of the things that we're talking about could potentially bring heat on us that we don't want to have to deal with, or could be things that people are viewing all of us as credible voices. But now there is a pushback. There is a pushback against Black, brown, LGBT, all of those things. How do we navigate so that we continue to have these strong voices in times like this, where we might be doing so at personal risk?
Oh, yeah. And I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time. But it's staying true to what you were called to do. I have a 9-to-5, so I'm blessed that I don't rely on my creator space for income. And I know that comes with certain things sometimes, right? But that aside, it's just being true to what it is. So right now, my radio show teamed up with Vive Healthcare, Philly Black Pride. We are running an HIV awareness STI campaign right now with SEPTA. We are on 10 digital ads. We have a commercial running on social media. Thank you. Because while resources are being removed, while the federal government is taking websites down, while communities are scared and unsure about what resources we're going to have access to, I'm using my platform. We're using our platforms to put that information back up. So it's, it's showing the people like, hey, I'm going to be on the front line. I'm not just, in the back in my cubicle, on a podcast scared. No, it's about being active. And how do you activate the community and the people who are listening to and following your platform?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else want to touch on that?
Yeah, I definitely will. I mean, I've been on the edge before this all was going down. As somebody who's always lived on the edge, I always built my career around being independent. I've always been an independent journalist. I've always had multiple streams of revenue because I knew I wanted to say what I wanted to say. And I didn't want nobody to turn the lights down. My podcast is independently produced. It's not done by anybody else. It's me. It's all me. I think it's important for Black journalists and creators to realize that you should always have your own independent voice. No one should be able to shut something down because I'm not going to be silenced. A lot of different outlets will tell you what to say, how to say, and they'll threaten to, you piss this person off, so they want to take you off the air. I don't have those issues because I always know that if one place don't open the door, I got to create my own door, my own building. We talk about getting a seat at the table. Sometimes we just make our own tables. And so I would say for me, it's important to just diversify your streams of revenue, diversify your opportunities, and also create some things that's just for yourself. I love my podcast because I get to curse the way I want to. I get to talk about what I want to. I can name names. I don't have to leave it on the playground. I just get to do all of those things. And I think it's just so important for people to have agency. So whatever you're doing as a creator, just give yourself some agency so that no matter what happens, people can't tell you what to do, because there are people that will tell me, look, I'll listen to whatever is on the radio stations, but then I listen to your podcast to get the real in-depth, uncensored truth. And so that's what Ernestly Speaking is about.
Yeah. And Misho Mission, independent, all 100%?
We have advertisers. We are on a podcast channel, all the different outlets. But I really do think the important thing, speaking to independence, is keeping it scalable. Mm-hmm. Keeping it scalable. Like we have a studio, we have cameras and all that. Beautiful studio. But, my partner and all praise to my partner, Lynn Webb, is the technical side of it. And we are able, on the turn of a dime, we can do it in his kitchen. Mm-hmm. So my advice would be to build up those skills so that if you get to the point where you do have all of this and they take it away, you can still navigate on your own terms. Right. Or be like me and partner with somebody. Right. Do that.
Well, I want to give everyone a chance just to say where you can be found. So I'll start with you, Eric, and go around, and then we will wrap it up for the next panel.
Yes. Hey, family and community. My name is Eric Cole. Once again, you can find me at Hung Up Pod on Instagram and also on all podcasting platforms. And I have a show on WRD called UnPacking. It comes on Saturday night at 10 p.m. and Wednesday at 10 p.m. as well.
Yay.
Hello, family. Again, my name is Natasha Terrell. You can find me and the podcast at Travel Fly Sexy on all your social media platforms and also on all your streaming platforms. And we do have the YouTube because the fits be fitting. So if you want to see us, and in addition to listening, we are also on YouTube at Travel Goddess International. And then our segment is every third Tuesday of the month at 11:40 a.m. with Reality Check.
Reality Check. Yeah, Vince.
I'm Vincent Williams, and with my partner, Lynn Webb, we are the Micheaux Mission, named after Oscar Micheaux. And we are on all of the social media and podcast platforms just under Micheaux Mission. And also on a YouTube channel. I don't know how much the fits are fitting, but oftentimes I'm wearing a sweatshirt. So we drop on, we go live Tuesday night. And Tuesday during the day, we're at the point now where we're dropping, a quote unquote classic episode. So we just dropped an episode where the actors Dorian Missick and Omar Dorsey, we reviewed Dolomite. Talk about that. Yeah. And then we dropped the podcast on Thursday. So,
Ernest?
Thank you. I would just say Google me, but that's I have a website, ernestowens.com. That's where my podcast and all that stuff is at. ernestowens.com is there. I'm on WRD every Thursday at 10 a.m. Doing City Council Live. So we have a lot in store tomorrow morning. So tune in for that. But also have a podcast, Ernestly Speaking, which is available on all podcasting places except Spotify because they decided to give Seth Rogen or whoever his name is $200 million to be racist. So I just can't be on that podcast station. But I also wrote a book called The Case for Cancel Culture, ironically, that is available everywhere as well. So yeah, find me out.
Well, I want to thank everybody on the panel for being here tonight. Thank you for your insight. Absolutely. Thank you for your insight. And most importantly, thank you for your voice. It is so important. It is so needed. And we appreciate everything that you're doing. On behalf of WURD, we are going to, take a little bit of a break and then we will move on to the next panel. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
You're listening to Behind the Mic, Personal Journeys in Audio on WURD. And now, Ashanti Martin.
This panel is called Behind the Mic, the tools and techniques of audio creation. So our first panelist is a WURD Radio contributor, a media personality, a tech expert, and co-host of the Tech John podcast, Miss Stephanie Humphrey. All right. Our next panelist is the co-host of Late Night with Lur and Lionel. I see Lionel in the room, but we also have the co-owner of Rocky Media Studios, Stephen Lur Chandler. And finally, we have CEO of Rebel Hill Consulting, a longtime videographer, marketer, business development, tech guru, Zachary James. Thank you all for being here. So we're going to talk about some of the tools and techniques of audio creation. And I curated this panel, one, because you're Tech Life Steph, right? For anyone who does not, if you tune into WURD, you will hear, spots from Stephanie talking about, how to curate your digital life, how to take care of your digital health. So she offers her gems on WURD Radio along with a lot of other places. Zachary, you have a lot of experience in production, so I definitely wanted to tap your expertise on that. And Lur, you are the co-owner of a podcast studio. So Rocky Media Studios. Okay. So my first question is, why are podcasts so long? No, seriously. Seriously, though, I just want to kind of go. So, Stephanie, how long is your podcast usually?
It roughly ends up being about an hour. It can be shorter. We don't force it to be an hour if it's not an hour's worth of content and conversation. But I don't think it's ever been shorter than 45 minutes. And it can go over if the conversation is flowing and popping, but we definitely try to keep it right at that 60-minute mark. I think that's our sweet spot.
Okay. And how often do you publish your podcast?
Our podcast is weekly. It's called The Tech John. You can find it wherever you download your podcast. But it is weekly. We record live on Monday nights to our Patreon subscribers, which I know we'll probably talk about. But the podcast goes live for download on Tuesdays.
Okay, great. And what time do you publish it? Just curious.
I don't do that, so I couldn't. One of my co-hosts handles that part of it, but it's usually Tuesday morning, sometime in the morning. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, Steven.
Yes.
Late Night with Laura and Lionel.
Yes.
How long is that podcast?
Our podcast is 2 hours. It just kind of happened like that. We was recording. We started off. I'll be honest. We used to be drunk a little bit. So we would just, me and Lionel's right there in the back with the Ollie's Movers jacket on. But we used to drink some tequila and just talk for 2 hours on my couch. And we, before we had the cameras rolling and stuff. So it's 2 hours. Now it's like 1 hour and 45 because we older now. So we be trying to get home to our families and stuff, but no less than like 1 hour 40.
Yeah. And tell us about the topics that you talk about on your podcast.
The topics are definitely adult. You said we can't have a show on WURD, so you got to come get it from us.
I said it could maybe be a good night.
But no, so our topics are like, we try to promote like sex positivity in the Black community. A lot of times it's taboo, things that we talk about. A lot of people don't have these conversations with their own parents and things like that. So we say the things that people want to say, and people tell us that all the time. So if you listen to the whole podcast, it's not all raunchy, but our clips, because I know how to market things, I think, will get you tuned in, and it'll get you to listen to the entire depth of, us educated brothers.
And how frequently do you publish your podcast?
Once a week, Monday mornings at 6 a.m.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you find that's the best time to publish your podcast?
That's just what we've been doing. We didn't do too much research on it at first, but I felt like Mondays was always good for us on social media too. So I like to kick off people's week. People say we make their week sometimes. The Mondays could be corny a lot. So it's like you can wake up at 6 a.m. and when we late, they'd be like, "Where the podcast at? I'm going to work. I'm driving to work. I don't see it." So I think it's a great start off to the week.
So even though your podcast is called Late Night,
yes,
it actually publishes in the morning.
We used to record it late at night at my house, 11 o'clock, midnight. We didn't care. Now we record probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock, sometimes at noon. But we started off recording late at night. So we record late at night. It might not come out late at night, but we would definitely record at that time.
Okay, great. So Zach, I know you are you're a creative, you're sort of a technologist. Do you have a podcast?
I used to. It was called Zoom In with Zach, and it was the product of the pandemic. I'm a networker. I'm a people person, and I kind of went into a shell because I couldn't connect with folks. And I decided, all right, well, let me reconnect with folks. Let me reestablish relationships. And I use LinkedIn as that spot. But I was like, well, why hoard the connection? What if I reestablish this relationship in front of other people? So I created Zoom In with Zach, and it wasn't on Zoom. I used StreamYard to produce it. I'm a big fan of StreamYard. And I would reconnect. We got some streamers in here, okay?
We need a sponsorship up in here.
Right, don't we? They need to break bread, for sure. But yeah, I was just like, if I'm going to share these relationships, let me do it to the public. And I've done about 50 episodes, and everybody on the show is someone I've known for 2, 3, 4 years, people I might have worked with in a past career. So I would reconnect with them for about 15, 20 minutes off camera. And I would give them a little prep for what the show entails. And then we would go into the show, which that sweet spot was about 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was great. But I started to gain interest from other people wanting me to produce their shows in a similar fashion. And then that kind of started the Rebel Hill Productions part of my business and really got me doing virtual podcasting for people.
Okay, great. So I know me personally, one thing I love to ask, and I want to hear from everybody who does podcasts and does this work is, 2 things, your faves, right? What is your favorite must-have piece of equipment, hardware, and what is the software that, you just can't live without that helps you do great work? So I'll let anyone take that.
Zach being humble, I met him doing Mona's podcast, Don't Call Me White Girl podcast. He's an amazing producer. But I think for us, me and Lionel spent like our last $250 a piece or something on a Rodecaster like 4 years ago.
Rodecaster.
And
yes.
Yeah, we drove to Jersey and we spent our last little money on it and we was upset, but we had to do it. So I would go a Rodecaster outside of my camera.
What is Rodecaster?
That's the audio equipment. It's like a podcasting machine. Mm-hmm. So you can use an audio interface we started off with an audio interface. Sometimes still go back to an audio interface, but Broadcaster just makes it super easy if you want to start podcasting. It's not cheap, but it's an all-in-one production hardware. If you don't have access to a studio, if you don't want to spend money at a studio, you get a Rodecaster, some mics, and you can even use your iPhone to connect it. The audio goes straight to the iPhone video if you use the iPhone. So we need that for sure. We can't do nothing without it.
Okay. Anybody else?
My setup is pretty simple because my co-host and I are spread out across the country. I have one co-host in Columbus, Ohio, another one's in Atlanta. So we use StreamYard as our capture platform. So shout out to StreamYard. And then, a decent mic. I invested in a Shure MV7 and, it really has sort of leveled up the game for that. So that's kind of all I use. One of my co-hosts does have a mixer. I don't believe we use that. He does capture local recordings to have them kind of as a backup, but we kind of let StreamYard do a lot of that work for us at this point. And then, the mics, if the mics are good, I think you're good.
Yeah.
Both of those are fantastic. And I'll give you two more. I produce virtual podcasts and in-person podcasts. For virtual podcasts, StreamYard usually is my go-to. Your next best friend is Ethernet connection. If you do not use an Ethernet, you need to get on it because Wi-Fi has ruined at least 3 or 4 shows for me in the last 5-6 years, and clients do not want to hear that. So good connection if you're doing a virtual podcast. If you're filming in person, I'm a big fan of the Blackmagic ATEM switcher. This is great for anyone who is trying to speed up your editing process. It allows me to put in multiple cameras and allows me to pick the different angles and record that work. So now once the production is done, my film is already mixed. I might need to add some lower thirds or some intros, outros, but the heavy lifting is done. So a Blackmagic ATEM switcher is my favorite for in-person.
I think, are we using that right now?
Yes. Probably. I see the colors on the buttons. I see it from here. Great tool.
Yeah,
there's a video editor that saves your life. I mean, we didn't have that growing up. We had to manually slice everything, sit there and watch it for an hour or two and cut. So that thing is a blessing.
Yeah. So one of the things that, even though we had this conversation, Zach, where, we're talking about audio, I talked about why the focus on audio is because we're really hearing, listening to each other. But obviously you have video, you have social media. What is, tell me first, you said that you record your video virtually. What are some of the challenges that you've had virtually with virtual video? And, what do you do to sort of up the quality, when you can't be in person?
Yeah, it can be a challenge. And I think to Zach's point about, internet connection, I think that's where we get tripped up the most. One or more of us, our connection may go down. We may drop from the StreamYard stream. So that is an issue. Camera quality is, I won't call it an issue necessarily, but you can definitely see the difference in camera quality between the 3 hosts. Cause I use my FaceTime camera on my MacBook. I'm like, I have a camera, but I just don't feel like setting it up for that. But my other 2 hosts, one uses a higher quality webcam. The other one uses actually like a Sony ZV-1. So, there is that difference, but because of the way we shoot it, it's sort of a 3-box set up when you're watching it, it kind of becomes negligible at that point. I mean, the quality of the camera and the lighting and all the different things become negligible because we're so sort of squished together in this 3-box format. So, it's not that big a deal. Again, the internet is the most, pressing issue I think we come across. And that doesn't even happen that often. But, if there's a storm, that somebody may drop or something like that. So it's not a big deal, but we do try to mitigate for it. I know I am connected via Ethernet. I'm not sure what my co-hosts are doing, but we do try to mitigate for that.
Okay. Zach, how do you make the most out of virtual podcasts? How do you make them look amazing?
One thing, as she mentioned, having a camera. an external camera that can give you a better quality. You do need to probably get some sort of video capture card. You might have to buy more equipment than just having the camera, depending on what camera you're using. But if you can give that sort of high quality look, it makes your StreamYard look less like a Zoom and more like a professional video. And other assets is huge. StreamYard's capability is very vast. You can bring in commercials, videos, you can play music. You can, if you really get into doing overlays, shout out to Kyrie Terrell if you're still here somewhere. I see you, My New Philly. I learned how to do overlays 10 years ago with My New Philly.
What is an overlay?
An overlay is a graphic, and I would suggest if y'all are familiar with Canva, definitely have a pro Canva account. If you have a paid Canva account, you can make transparent visuals. So you can place all the things you want and then make the background transparent. Take that graphic and overlay it on top of your video. So now if you see, characters at the bottom, we used to do sports shows and we would have the athletes at the bottom of the screen. That was a graphic sitting on top of the video feed, but the background was transparent, so you saw us. So creating overlays can really level up your graphics on StreamYard, and of course, take advantage of videos, commercials, and they just, not too recently, you can now play like background music, so just play around with that stuff, and that levels up the production a lot.
Okay. So I want to talk about in-person video. And so your podcast, do you shoot it at your studio?
Yes, we shoot them at the studio. We shoot Eat Your Heart Out podcast is one that we created and started.
Another good one.
And we shoot all in person. We tried virtual before. We went on Zoom. It wasn't
okay.
Stuff.
So what's the best way to what is the best way to set up a great in-person shot, and what are some mistakes and pitfalls that you've seen people make?
I always tell people the most important thing is lighting. For the most part, lighting is very important. You invest in lights. We used to record on an iPhone before I had the camera. We had good light all the time. Light opens up the environment, makes it less grainy. Anybody that does film knows how important where you place your lights, how bright they are, how low they are. It's very important. You can get a DSLR camera now for like $500 somewhere, or you can get like a $500 DSLR camera somewhere for like $500. Okay, I'm sorry. Yep, and invest in that, and get you a tripod, a camera, and get some lights. I tell my mom the same thing when she do her social media. Please get some lights. If you starting with your phone, get one or two of these, place them somewhere, and open up the environment. But we use Sony A6400s, which are not that expensive, but they work perfect for us. We have had some downfalls. We've lost files. Things get corrupted. That's very frustrating. But we just re-record, which is not as easy as it sounds, but trying to get that energy together. But just have some good lighting, please, because there's nothing worse than seeing people's videos and the lighting is bad and the audio is also not on. It's the camera audio, but they have microphones, and I'm not a huge fan of that.
Lur,
Yes.
I want to talk about communities, right? Mm-hmm. So events is one way. You mentioned Discord. You also mentioned Patreon. How do you engage with your podcast community digitally, virtually?
We feed the people a lot of content. We try our best. Did we have a Discord? Our Discord is live all day long. It's people talking all day long, kicking it. We started off having a group me before we knew about Discord. I don't know if you ever heard about group me. It's like another chat site. But we have people in there, and so much so, it's so much community that in North Carolina, like 40 of them came. They were just like outside of the people that just bought tickets, they all came and made it a trip from different states, and they came to North Carolina, Charlotte, to come to the live show. So, and a lot of them over the years have been friends now, like hanging out outside of the Discord and things like that, going on trips. So for us, community is important. We don't have a supporter base without a community. Even in the times where me and Lionel and Aisha and we so busy and we like, we can't post this, we don't want to be here, we busy, we stressing, we still get in the Discord because these people literally spend money on Patreon to get in the Discord, and we're very appreciative. So community is everything with podcasting. That's why we stay active, because without it, we don't have anything. Those are the people that spend money. Those are the people that see you on the street. Those are the people that literally buy merchandise. One of our supporters just sent us 2 audio interfaces and microphones because we didn't know how to stream correctly. You know what I'm saying? So we learned in the new streaming game, but people will support you. So to me, community is everything. My family, my lady, my mom, my team, like everybody here is supporting each other. This is what we do.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to Lur, thank you to Steph, and thank you so much to Zach for sharing all these insights. And so please, everyone, give him a round of applause. All right. Again, I want to just thank the whole WURD team. I want to thank Michelle at Canvas. I want to thank our sponsors, Comcast, Pennsylvania Lottery. I want to also thank our partners, Scribe Video Center, Brightness and Black. And definitely, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. This was so special, and I hope that you come to our next event, and you'll be hearing from us. So thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a special WURD presentation of Behind the Mic, Personal Journeys in Audio. To hear the conversation in its entirety, please visit our SoundCloud link at soundcloud.com/onword. That's soundcloud.com/on WURD. Thanks for listening.